Welcome to Judiciary Committee members and the audience. If we would go ahead and take the roll. Let's go and get punched in. Let's see. Members, if you would go ahead and enter into the committee meeting today. That's the blue button, PNV. Leader Lambert, sir. Thank you. All right. Representative Garrett. Thank you, sir. I missed it here. I missed that. So, all right. Representative Powell, present. There you go. Working on it. Okay. Looks like we're good deal. All right, we good? If you would go ahead and take the roll. We good?
Mr. Chair, you have 17 members present. You have a quorum.
All right, looks like we're good to go. Like I said, welcome to Judiciary Full Committee. It's good to be here, ready to get moving. Members, we have any announcements, any personal orders, or anything like to take care of before we get started? All right, seeing none, let's do it. Folks, we've got a calendar today. We have, I believe we have 9 bills. We have 3 presentations. Members, if we would, let's go ahead and get these presentations going. I think we'll have plenty of time today. So without objection, we're going to go out of session and hear from the Memphis, the youth villages. And folks, appreciate you all being here. And I believe we have Ms. Deason and Mr. Porter. Is that correct? And you all have, and the mics are a little bit different this year. We worked those from up here, so you don't need to push any buttons on those microphones. If you push a button, you're going to cut yourself off. And you'll know it's ready. There's a red light right here. The one's on as my microphone. You can see it on yours too, so you know you're live and everything you say will hear. And I believe we've got a 10 to 15 minute on the presentation. So I'll let y'all go ahead and get started. We'll have unlimited time for questions after that. So you're recognized. If you would just introduce yourself, let us know who you're with once again, and then you can go in to do what you need to do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and committee members. All right. I'm Susan Deason, Executive Director of Memphis Allies. I'm joined by Mick Wright, our Government Relations Manager. We're grateful to be here with you on this snowy afternoon to present about our initiative. Chairman Farmer, thank you for this opportunity to provide an overview and an update on the Memphis Allies initiative to combat gun violence in Memphis and Shelby County. This initiative is in its 3rd year, and in addition to the generous support of private donors, we appreciate Governor Lee and this legislature for the generous investments made over the past 3 years. This includes funding from the Governor's Violent Crime Intervention Fund through the OCJP, which was a partnership with Memphis Police Department and the Shelby County Sheriff's Office. In particular, I want to thank the members of the Shelby County delegation and Leader Lambert for your support of previous funding requests. We have a presentation to go through today, and we won't have time to go through all of the slides, but I do want to share with you the most critical parts of our initiative. First of all, as you know, we are with youth villages, but our initiative is called Memphis Allies because this initiative is distinct from other programs that have been developed at youth villages because it's a partnership with other organizations who are our allies in this work. So my colleague Mick will share with you a little bit more about those partnerships as we go along, but many of our partners are directly connected to us in doing this work under the same roof where we serve. And we also have ancillary partners that support the work in different ways. So you all are familiar with Youth Villages programs, but what you see on the screen are highlighted the programs that Memphis Allies funds in part. I want to draw your attention in particular to the gun violence reduction programs in the lower right-hand corner, Switch and Switch Youth. We did a lot of research. This is evidence-informed and evidence-based work, and we determined that the best way for us to reduce violence in the short term in our community is to provide high-intensity services to those at highest risk for involvement with gun violence. So our model, again, is called SWITCH. It stands for Support with Intention to Create Hope. These services serve those at highest risk, and we are serving right now around 475 high-risk individuals. And when we refer to a high-risk individual, we're talking about individuals between the ages of 12 and 35 who have been involved in a gang or a clique or a crew. They have extensive history with the justice system. Many of them are not in school, not employed, and most importantly, they have close proximity to others who are engaging in gun violence. So they have a close friend or family member who's been recently shot or shot at, or they themselves have been recently shot or shot at. You may think that that encompasses a large number of individuals in our community, but actually, relative to the overall population, it's a small percentage. We believe on any given day, there's between 650 and 1,000 individuals who meet this criteria and are eligible for services in our program. So to scale, this is a very doable goal and outcome. Briefly, I want to describe to you what these high-intensity services consist of. There's a team of trained individuals that surround all of the participants in our program. We have outreach specialists, life coaches, case managers, and clinical specialists. Each individual working with our participants is trained in a particular discipline and comes with a particular set of skills and expertise designed to help a high-risk individual get off their current trajectory and onto the path of being free in the community and engaging in pro-social ways and no longer committing any acts of violence. We have a lot of early evidence that suggests this is working. Again, right now, we're serving around 475 individuals across all of our programs. And I want to show you what some of those early results are. We are right now staffed at around 200 staff members. We are in 5 areas of the city: Raleigh-Fraser, Orange Mound, Hickory Hill, Whitehaven, and South Memphis. The remaining 2 regions we will enter by the end of this fiscal year or the beginning of next fiscal year, and we are citywide for our youth program between the ages of 12 to 18. So when we talk about the outcomes, most important thing that I want to emphasize with you all today is where we are with participants who've received additional charges involving a weapon. Right now, as you can see, just a little over 7% of our adult population has been rearrested with a charge with a weapon, and right at 13% of our youth population have been rearrested with a charge involving a gun. Last fiscal year, in total, between our youth and our adults, only 87% of our participants did not receive new charges with weapons, compared to national recidivism rates, which are closer to 50%. This is really promising in terms of our early outcomes with the participants we serve. Again, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to have accountability for our work, to track and measure our outcomes, but also to partner with those who are credible members of the community, other organizations, grassroots organizations, who can bring these services to those who are at highest risk. I'm going to pass it to my colleague to share with you more about how we partner and who we partner with.
Good afternoon, Chairman Farmer and members of the committee. Again, thank you for allowing us to be here today. I am Mick Wright. I'm the Government Relations Manager for the Memphis Allies Initiative, substituting in today for Javante Porter, who is our Community Relations Manager. And just to reiterate what Susan shared about our approach, which is that we really want to work together with community groups. Our community partners include implementing partners. So these are other groups that are grassroots groups that are working alongside us at Youth Villages to implement this switch model. And so they are working, they've got teams that are hired in their organizations, but working side by side with us, delivering the same model to the same high-risk individuals. So we have a few of those implementing partners, but then also we have partners that we bring in for group activities who provide group programming both to adults and to our youth. And then we have partners that are more specifically youth focused, that do some preventative work, but who are also branching out and doing some more of this intervention related services to high risk youth and adults. So that is our approach. We're very insistent that we want to work with other grassroots groups in Memphis, and we believe very strongly that the entire community is going to be part of the solution.
The only other thing that I would add about our partners is that what you see on the slide does not encompass all of the partners we work with. We have additional partners that serve and support us in other ways, and we can't fit them all onto one slide. But these are the partners that we routinely work with, most of whom actually have a contract with us to provide services.
Very good, and thank you for that. Members, do we have any questions for Ms. Deason or Mr. Wright? Representative Hardaway, you're recognized.
All right. Thank you, Chairman, and good morning to you. Welcome. I'm going to call and fuss at Javante. He just couldn't get up. It was cold. What was the problem? Oh, that's a serious question.
Oh. The entire school system is closed in Memphis, and he is on duty.
Daddy duties. And of course, Orange Mound. I'm Orange Mound, and Orange Mound belongs to me. And so I'm very interested in what happens in the Orange Mounds on those streets. I don't see some of the organizations that would have some close ties, because these folks would be from the community, and that's the Divine Nine. Am I missing that, or are y'all working on those relationships?
Well,
Black fraternities and sororities?
Right. So in an ancillary way, yes, we support many of those sororities and fraternities when it comes to events where they request our support. So one of the things that is on this previous slide is how we support partners in the community. So the bulk of our resources go directly to the intervention services, Switch and Switch Youth. And our biggest contracts and supportive partnerships are with organizations who actually implement the model alongside us. But we also give back to other organizations in smaller ways with small capacity building grants. And we frequently have other organizations who are supporting similar work who request grants, and we evaluate those and support their events and opportunities to partner. Yes.
I'd like to facilitate more involvement on their behalf. The other thing that I'm organization I'd like to ask about your involvement, I didn't see the 100 Black Men or the Coalition of 100 Black Women. Do you have any collaborative efforts moving forward?
Not formally, but I think those are really good ideas, and especially because there's connection to every part of the city in those two groups that you mentioned. So I think that could be really good synergy. Again, I'd ask you to keep in mind that when we think about sending our interventionists out into the streets, those organizations are extremely important to that cause. We've focused today on organizations that deliver services to those directly, but I think you're absolutely right. There's a lot of reach within those organizations and a lot of ways that we could have synergy. So I think those are great ideas. But to be specific, I Shall Not Die But Live is our leading partner in Orange Mound. Renardo Baker runs that organization, and he and the Youth Villages team lead all the operations for our on-the-ground work in Orange Mound.
All right, and just for the record, I speak directly from Orange Mound, but my concern is all of Memphis and Shelby County and the great state of Tennessee. Just one more question, Mr. Chairman, and that's on the involvement of our local governments. What are we getting from the school board, the city of Memphis, Arlington, Bartlett, Germantown, Collierville, Millington, Lakeland? And what are we getting from the county commission? What are our local governmental agencies kicking in on this?
We have a grant through the Shelby County Health Department. And again, the state funding that comes to Memphis flows through the law enforcement agencies of MPD and the OCJP. Right now, those are the funds. We have actually had some county commission funding that was a direct appropriation to this effort, but most of our funding for the initiative is private dollars and state dollars.
Yeah, Representative Hardaway, go ahead.
Yeah, on the medical side, the psychological side, both the physical and the mental health side, is LeBonner Children's Hospital, is that network involved with you?
Yes, we're very closely partnered with LeBonner, which would be a great example of a partner that you don't see here. Our medical partners are not on this list. And actually, I'd be happy to supply you. We have a progress report that has a full list of everybody we partnered with last year. Can't guarantee somebody's not missing from that list, but it'll give you a much more comprehensive look at who we have partnered with. But LeBonner has a hospital violence intervention program along with Regional 1, has an adult counterpart of a hospital violence intervention program. So we partner closely with both hospitals. And in fact, we have a full-time individual on our community relations team that is the liaison between those two hospitals and our program.
We can verify these numbers. We need to put them in the budget first.
All right, and thank you, thank you, Representative Hardaway. And as I understood it, I think the dollars they're getting are either directly from the state of Tennessee or indirectly from the state of Tennessee in private funding. So I believe from the state standpoint, we're helping them in a very large way. And I think we need to continue to do so. It sounds like they're doing some great things for our communities, and none of our communities are the same either. You know, things that are going on in Memphis versus things that are going on over in East Tennessee, where I live, are a whole lot different. And I can never understand, like Representative Hardaway does, as he's lived there and grown up there and represented those folks and is there on a weekly basis, what's going on there. So we appreciate you all doing what you do to provide us with the information to help us know what we need to do with our taxpayers' dollars.
Thank you. And again, may I speak
Sure, go
to
ahead.
that briefly? We greatly appreciate the generosity of the legislature. I do want to point out that in subsequent rounds of violent crime intervention funding, a lot of that funding is being directed to other organizations, not Memphis Allies. We received a very generous appropriation from the first violent crime intervention fund distribution, but we do have a request into the state for additional funding this year and would greatly appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have the next on the list. I have Representative Salinas, and then I'll come to you, Representative Johnson.
Hello. I represent some of the areas that they are active in, Fraser and Raleigh. So GA represents Orange Mound, and I represent Fraser and Raleigh. I know that some of this stuff is really early, and you haven't been active for a long time, but I really appreciate the data that you are bringing to us, being that it is a very newish program. And I remember meeting you, Mick, I think when there was just a sheet of paper.
Right.
The Allies program was just a sheet of paper, and we were talking about this idea, and you hadn't even hired people. So the way that you all have been able to stand up this program and work with local government partners. And I know you're just getting started and are being intentional about how you're moving forward. So I just wanted to say I commend you for all of that. And I do have a little bit of bias because I have a family member that works for Memphis Allies, but I really like the time and effort that y'all have been putting in thoughtfulness into bringing forth a solution that works for our community and is shaped by the community.
Thank you very much.
Next, I'll have Representative Johnson. You're recognized.
Yes. Excuse me. I'm curious. I wanted to verify something. I thought what I heard you say was that your recidivism rate on gun violence for that group or that age group was 13% and the national average is 50%.
Yes.
Thank you.
And
so
that's for
much.
the youth. We have an even lower recidivism rate, around 8% for our adults.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Members, anyone else? I don't have anyone else on the list. All right. Thank you both so much
Thank
for
you.
being here. It means a lot to us, and just appreciate you taking your time and doing what you do for the communities that you all are serving. Representative Hardaway?
Thank you, Chairman. Are we receiving these slides? Are they coming to you to distribute?
I have been told they are on dashboard, so we should be able to access those at dashboard. Thank you all
Thank you.
so much. All right, next we're going to take up the DNA collection presentation. I believe it's sponsored by Arnold Ventures. Have a few folks coming up there, I believe. Yeah, y'all just step on up there and you can sit on either side. Very good. You'll know when your mic's ready that the red light will be on. I think you all had witnessed other folks testify there. So if you would just let us know who you are, who you're with, and 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll take some questions.
Patrick Powell, Policy Director here at TBI. I will just be here mainly for questions and if there are any issues or thoughts about what TBI is currently doing. But obviously these folks have come a long way, so I'm going to defer to them for most of the presentation.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm Ashley Spence with DNA Justice Project.
Do you want to give your remarks?
I think we're just.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm John Roman. I am the director of the Center on Public Safety and Justice at NORC at the University of Chicago.
And however y'all want to, whoever wants to lead off, is just fine. Just
Okay, great.
sounds good.
We sound unpracticed. Apologies.
That's all right.
I've worked at NORC at the University of Chicago and the Urban Institute in Washington, D.C. and studied the intersection of DNA in the criminal justice system for more than 2 decades. I'm honored by the opportunity to provide background on research about using DNA to solve more crimes and improve public safety. And when I say about using DNA and CODIS and the CODIS DNA database. So over the last 2 decades, the scope and scale of CODIS has expanded substantially. Since 1998, the number of states participating in CODIS has increased from 9 states to all 50, and the number of DNA profiles included in CODIS has increased from about 3 million in 2005 to 22.5 million by the end of last year. The types of offenders and arrestees eligible for inclusion have grown as well. So CODIS can reduce crime in 3 ways: through specific deterrence, general deterrence, and by directly aiding criminal investigations. With respect to criminal investigations, DNA evidence gives investigators a tool to identify unknown suspects that is substantially more effective and efficient than alternatives. Recent research has shown that as the number of offender profiles in CODIS increases, the likelihood of CODIS aiding an investigation increases. In my own research conducted at the Urban Institute in partnership with the U.S. Department of Justice, we found that collecting and testing biological evidence from residential burglary crimes, residential burglaries, that using that biological evidence led to the identification of a perpetrator in 31% of cases, compared to just 12% where no DNA evidence was collected. Biological evidence collection and testing also doubled the likelihood of an arrest in residential burglaries to 16% from 8%. Processing DNA evidence was 3 times more effective than fingerprint collection in identifying unknown suspects. And the costs are relatively modest. We estimate that it was about $3,500 in total expenses to arrest an otherwise unknown suspect using biological evidence from a crime scene and DNA testing. That's probably the most important point. The criminal histories of offenders arrested for residential burglary show a pattern of serious chronic offending. The average person arrested in a DNA-aided investigation of a residential burglary, I'm talking burglaries, that average person had 3 prior felony convictions and almost 6 prior felony arrests. And these arrests and convictions are for serious person crimes. These aren't just serial property offenders. And that's just the benefit from burglary. The active use of CODIS serves as a general deterrent to criminal offending across the population of potential offenders. Increases in the size of the CODIS database increase the likelihood of any detection through CODIS. That increased detection increases clearance rates, and higher clearance rates signal to all potential offenders that their risk of getting caught has increased, and thus all new crimes are suppressed. With respect to specific deterrence, adding a person's offender profile to CODIS increases their own deterrence. It reduces the likelihood that that person will reoffend because they know that their own particular risk of being identified has increased. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I would be delighted to answer your questions.
Members, do we have any questions? Representative Bolso, you're on the list. Are you recognized?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dr. Roman, for being here and testifying for us. Let me ask you this, because I was intrigued by your testimony about higher clearance rates, reducing crime across the board. If you were a member of the Tennessee General Assembly, is there some law that you could pass or policy you could propose that would act to increase our clearance rates here in Tennessee?
Yeah, so typically, the way we think about it in the policy world is that you can increase the certainty of detection, which is the likelihood that you arrest an offender in a specific crime. You can increase the severity of the punishment, or you can increase the swiftness at which you punish, right? So these are the 3 tools that you have at your disposal. And of those 3, increasing the certainty of detection is by far, according to the research, the most effective way to reduce crime. If you send the signal to people that if they commit a crime, they'll get caught, people will just simply commit fewer crimes. So if you were, for instance, to increase the number of people who were included in the DNA database to include potentially all people arrested for a violent crime instead of just people who were convicted, you would then have a much larger database to compare crime scene evidence against. You would identify more suspects in those cases. You would have more arrests. The prosecution's very easy in those cases. You have this incredibly strong probative evidence, and it's relatively inexpensive. And you would then increase the clearance rate and send a signal to all potential offenders that their likelihood of being caught and punished is much higher.
President Bolso, any follow-up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have an understanding as to how many of our local and state law enforcement agencies across the state routinely collect the type of biological evidence that you're referring that could be used in solving future crimes?
So I don't have exact data. We are working on a partnership through Arnold Ventures with 4 cities, with Chattanooga, Knoxville, Nashville, and Memphis, to look at whether they have the capacity to expand their criminal investigations to include the routine collection of biological evidence in residential burglaries. And right now, they don't have that capacity. There are some state statutes that prioritize what evidence they have to collect and test. And that doesn't leave a lot of resources left over for the kind of evidence collection that we're suggesting. We are running this experiment here to specifically see what additional benefit there is on public safety in Tennessee if this evidence is collected, and we're happy to report back to this committee and to the legislature what we find.
Representative Bolso?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Roman.
Thank you.
All right, next on the list, we have, who's next? Oh, excuse me, Vice Chair Davis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to say thank you for being here today. I have a couple of questions, and so I'm not really sure who to direct them to, but the first one I have speaks to when we put that DNA evidence into our national database, does that contain private genetic information?
May I speak?
Sure.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank you for asking that. I would love to go into my story after, but what goes into our DNA database, many people think it's 23andMe, Ancestry.com. In fact, that's not it at all. It's just 20 to 24 markers that were specifically picked by genetic scientists. So it has no information. It wouldn't say that I'm Lebanese, that I'm predisposed to any genetic diseases. It wouldn't have a street name. It doesn't even actually have an actual name in there, just a specimen ID number. And it's a very good system. The combined DNA index system is what it's called, CODIS, and it's been around since 1998. We have never had a breach. And even if we did, all they would find is numbers. And I think it's important to notice, if you are found not guilty, it is a federal law and requirement that you have to be able to have your DNA completely expunged and destroyed. The Office of the Inspector General, they do annual audits on the lab and also random audits, and there are heavy fines and even jail time.
Very good. And Ms. Spence, I was going to ask, do you have something you'd like to share with the committee?
Mr. Chair,
Maybe
yes.
you can go ahead and do that, and that way we can funnel some questions in. I hate to break it up too much, so you're recognized.
I sit before you all not just as a mother, but as a survivor. I was 19 years old, about to begin my sophomore year at Arizona State. In the middle of the night, an intruder entered my apartment, smothered my face with a pillow, and began to rape, beat, and nearly killed me. I was forced to endure this torture for hours. I could never see the face of the person committing these horrific crimes against me, but I am so fortunate to be here today. I survived, but he got away and I never saw his face. He told me before he left, do not tell anybody, because just like I was watching you before, I will come back and kill you if you do. But I worked day and night with detectives and there were no leads. The fear was paralyzing. I dropped out of school. I moved to Newport Beach, California before relocating back to my home state of Texas. And it was there, 7 years later, I got the shocking news. There was a DNA match in my case. And ironically, I moved to Newport Beach to escape this man. In reality, I moved to the very city that he lived. When they caught him and he was arrested 1 block away from where I lived all those years, trying to break into a home where 3 young women lived. He was arrested on an unrelated offense. He resisted the officer's arrest, and that is a felony. In California, thankfully, they share the law that 19 states share. Upon every felony arrest, DNA is taken. So they took his fingerprints, his photographs, they took a cheek swab, they uploaded it into our national DNA database, CODIS, and it hit a match back to mine and multiple others all those years before. He was a serial predator. He had a shed behind his home full of women's underwear, ID cards from all over the world. We waited on trial for 5 years, partially because of Supreme Court ruling. In 2013, a very, very important case, Maryland versus King, they found taking your DNA cheek swab for qualifying arrest is a reasonable and just part of the booking procedure under the Fourth Amendment. They compared it to fingerprints. Because of that ruling, we went to trial, and he is now in prison for nearly 138 years. I am so fortunate to have this justice, but all victims deserve justice. And unfortunately, due to outdated collection policies and loopholes in the system, victims will continue to have justice withheld. As the law stands in Tennessee today, my rapist would still be free because resisting the officer would not qualify as an offense that you would swab his cheek for. So he would be out there today raping and harming other women. All 50 states collect DNA upon felony conviction. Of those, 31 do certain violent felony arrest and burglary, what Tennessee does, and I'm very, very proud of you all. It's an incredible stepping stone. Of those, 19 do all felonies. My home state of Texas, we just became the 19th, and Texas DPS just published the numbers in our first year. So in 2024, we actually solved 1,005 cases through this alone. It is a huge and exciting number. When New Mexico enhanced their database to collect for every felony arrest, they saw an 83% match rate increase in the database. And what we know, a Case Western Reserve University study found that an overwhelming majority of serial rapists have felony level criminal history. So we have to get them early. The most prolific serial rapist of young little girls in Colorado was not caught through the string of rapes, but he was caught through a felony forgery. There is one man in 2000 who was charged with 8 murders and aggravated sexual assault. If the state had required him to give his DNA when he was arrested for a felony possession of controlled substance, he would have been matched to an aggravated criminal sexual assault 5 years before that. And guess what? We would have stopped 8 homicides and 1 aggravated rape that we know of. So we have to catch them early. One more quick thing is DNA databases are very great with reducing rates of recidivism. A 2020 study found that in the first year of DNA database registration, we had a decrease in property crime by 44%, violent crime by 60%, and weapon offenses by 88%. So I'm very honored to be here in Tennessee. I know you all do tremendous work. I thank you. I'm a mother for everything that you do to protect children in your communities. And only by looking at expanding the arrestee legislation to collect DNA, you will just begin to build upon the successes that you already have. And I just want to say, for 7 years, I was haunted because I would hear the muffled screams of my perpetrator's next victim in my head. He was out there and he was not stopping. But because of DNA and DNA policy, like we're looking at today, he can now never harm another person again. So this is really important to not only prevent crime, to provide justice, but to exonerate those that are wrongfully sitting in our prisons today and to protect our children. I would be honored to ask any questions, and I thank you so much for your time.
And thank you for that. Vice Chair Davis, I'm going to come back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mrs. Spence. That was, I appreciate your vulnerability in being here today and letting us know about your story and the passion and the advocacy that you have now. And so I appreciate your answer with regard to the database and kind of how that works, that it kind of keeps that anonymity there. And so that's one of the things. Now, you kind of answered one of my other questions with regard to, does the DNA stay in that database forever? And so you really answered that in terms of if that person is found not guilty. And then there's a process and a procedure for destruction of that. Is that accurate?
That is, yes.
Okay, I think Patrick's wanting to talk.
Mr. Powell, you're recognized.
I was going to say, currently the law does require TBI to remove the sample from CODIS and destroy the swab. So upon any kind of dismissal or expungement, we do that process. It takes just a couple of days.
Vice Chair Davis, any
Just,
follow-up?
just one more.
You're recognized.
And my question has to do with who has access to that DNA database.
Only
And that's the last
approved labs through the FBI. So TBI has access. I mean, you have to have a secure terminal in a secure area. I mean, it is very protected. It is not any kind of public access or anything like that.
Vice Chair Davis.
Thank
you. Next list, I have Representative Hardaway. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm on now. And I salute you, ma'am. Your journey from victim to victor. I salute you for that. It takes a lot of courage and for you to just stay committed to seeking justice. That's admirable.
Thank you.
And you're helping so many others by your advocacy now. It's humbling when I just think of what we could do to aid you in your quest for justice, not just for yourself, but for those who have been victimized. And the purest form of justice is prevention. So what the road that you're on will yield that at some point in time for some folks who will never know that you're the reason why they were not victimized. So I salute you again on that. To the gentleman, I can't remember your name, but I'd like for you to tell me how the collection of that DNA for property crimes with burglaries, are you including auto burglaries with that?
Mr. Roman?
No. I'm John Roman. So we did a series of studies in partnership with the Department of Justice during the Bush administration, 2005 to 2010. And this was a study of collecting biological evidence from residential burglary crime scenes. We also tested whether they could be collected from commercial burglaries and from theft from auto, and then did a separate study in Brooklyn, Queens, and Dallas on whether you could collect biological evidence from recovered stolen motor vehicles. So we sort of tested it broadly on high volume crimes and found that residential burglaries was really the place where it had the highest returns. Other cases are very difficult to make. It's very difficult to link biological evidence in a recovered car, for instance, to be able to not only put the person whose DNA is on whatever that evidence is in that car, but to put them in the car at the time it was stolen is really hard. Commercial robberies, burglaries are really hard to solve because so many people go in and out of those places at different times. So residential burglary is really the place where we see that there's a cost-effective opportunity to identify high-volume offenders who also have serious chronic criminal histories in a very cost-effective way.
And did you say we do or do not have that type of collection and analysis in Tennessee?
You have the capability to do that kind of collection and analysis. You do not currently have the capacity, as I understand it.
So, of course, this takes me to crime labs. The turnaround and the capacity, how would those two things impact the ability to initiate that program and for it to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a number of ways to increase the capacity of a crime lab. The most direct way is to hire more examiners and increase the physical size of the place. Some of the cities that we worked with on this study, we worked in Phoenix, LA, Denver, Topeka, and Orange County, California, and some outsource these samples. So there's ways to do it through private contracts with private vendors. The problem is having enough crime scene analysts who are trained to go to a crime scene and collect the evidence to prioritize these cases, right? And if anybody on the dais has had their house burgled, it's a very traumatic event. It's a violation of the sort of your core, your home. But we don't process those crime scenes as if they're a serious crime. In some cities, those reports are taken in an automated way. You literally report it to a recorder, and somebody transcribes it, and they give you a case number, and you give that to your insurer, and you never see a patrol officer. So we'd have to totally change how we prioritize our response to these calls, and we'd have to have additional resources available for people who are trained to collect this evidence. It's very easy to do. It just takes time.
And have you developed the numbers on that to where we could look at it and see what our return on investment would be?
So yes. So we can say generically, we can't say for Tennessee. We are in the process of doing specifically that study here in 4 cities. And that is going to happen over the next couple of years. And we can come back and report back. From the perspective of the national picture, we know that it costs about $3,500 to have an added cost of investigating and processing and collecting evidence, physical evidence from residential burglaries. And we know that the returns in terms of incapacitating a serious chronic offender are many multiples of that.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all.
Representative Scarborough, you're next on the list. You're recognized, sir.
Ms. Spence, thanks for telling your story. That connects this body and brings us in to listen to you even closer. One thing we can do, and I know probably the most valuable thing we do as a legislative body, is provide the resources to local law enforcement to be effective when prosecuting cases. Personal experience, I've been in law enforcement 35 years, 16 as a police chief. Not only do I feel like this type of evidence is the best way to take repeat offenders off the street, it also encourages law enforcement agencies to train their officers into identifying, collecting, preserving, and submitting evidence in the correct way, and that requires some additional training for our officers. So we only were able to take advantage of that once we did that. And it can be something as simple as in our cases, is some smokeless tobacco at a doorway, some blood on a broken window. We solved cases on serial burglars with 2 cases just like that. So telling that story to us and making us aware of these possibilities is very helpful. And I thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Mr. Chair, may I say one thing about the cost savings quick?
Yes, Ms. Spence, you're
So
recognized.
2 important stats that I have on that. The University of Denver did a study and they found that for every $1 invested in DNA, $90 is ultimately saved. And Dr. Jennifer Doliak, she's phenomenal. She found that for every $35 to $55 cheek swab that is entered into our national DNA database, the taxpayer sees $27,000 in savings. So there is a good ROI, and we save lives.
Thank you.
Thank
Next
you
on
all.
the list, I have Leader Lamberth. You recognize, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And ma'am, thank you for your testimony. Gentlemen, thank you for being here as well. So the bill she's talking about is House Bill 473 by Representative Crawford or Chairman Crawford. Ma'am, as you were speaking, I have 11 co-signers that have signed on to that bill. Thank you for your testimony today, but that is literally just some members on this committee that support what you're trying to do and support the legislation that would make that happen in Tennessee. For other members that are on the committee, I have the sign-up sheet up here. We can pass it around later, but that's at least 11 co-sponsors just based on your testimony today. Thank you. You're a very brave and strong lady, and we appreciate you being here.
Y'all are amazing. That made me choke up. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next on the list, I have Representative Powell. You recognize, sir?
Thank you, Ms. Spence. Again, I appreciate your testimony. It's very powerful. And so I know it moved me. I know it moved a lot of people on this committee. I have a question about metrics. And if you need to get this back to me, that's fine. Do you know, I guess the best metric would probably be the number of cases that were solved with DNA in states that did it with every crime versus those that do not? So a comparison on that. Do you have those numbers?
Mr. Powell, is that a good question for you to answer?
I can answer at least in part.
You recognize.
Thank you. I can answer at least in part. Ms. Spence may be able to provide more out-of-state information. As far as what Tennessee has done, I pulled the numbers in preparation. Since we started, Tennessee has, let's say, after accounting for expunged and duplicated samples, we have entered 287,509 offender profiles and 163,133 arrestee profiles. A total of 7,621 investigations in Tennessee have been aided through CODIS since 2002, and that includes 322 in the last fiscal year. As far as out-of-state numbers, I don't have those. Ms. Spence may be able to give you more of a kind of a comparative number based on, obviously, her Texas numbers. I think she quoted earlier the improvement they had, but I don't have any comparison numbers.
Yeah. Any follow-up, Representative Powell?
If anyone else has an answer.
Yeah, I can just
Just give us one second.
thing.
Okay, you recognize Mr. Roman.
Thank you, sir. So what I would just add, so there's about 1 million burglaries in the United States each year. We solve about 1 in 8, so about 13%. What we find is that that collecting biological evidence at a residential burglary doubles the likelihood of an arrest. So that would be over 100,000 additional burglaries that were cleared by an arrest.
Okay. Thank you. Any follow-up, Representative Powell? All right, thank you. I have Representative Salinas, ma'am. You recognized.
I think I have 2 questions, and I'm not sure who. So of the labs that have access to CODIS, you also said you had no security breaches. So none of those labs have had any security breaches. Is that correct?
I'm unaware of any with our lab. Obviously, I only represent TBI. Ms. Spence may be able to have some information on the others.
Thank you. So so the combined DNA index system, it actually is a combination of local, state, and national database all in one, but the state owns all the information that goes into it. CODIS itself has never had a breach since 1998, even if they did. So as it works now, the DNA profile is uploaded and that's held in one system, but the name that is attached to it is actually held in a private offline system. And very few people, as you mentioned, have access to this system. And so we've never had a breach. Even if they did, they would find a series of numbers. I actually have it printed on my business card. I'll email you all. I've sent it out everywhere. It really doesn't have any information on there. And if there is a match in the database, what happens is the person that has control of this private offline system that actually has the name, they then can only release that name to the investigative team working the case. From there, they still have to get a search warrant for an arrest to get a second swab of DNA. So once they can build their case enough and then they get that arrest, they get the second swab of DNA. If it is a match, that is the only one that is admissible in court.
Any follow-up, Representative Salinas?
So I know CODIS hasn't had any security breaches, but the labs that have access to CODIS, that's the question that I was getting.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I can look into that for you, but I have not heard of any in my experience or in Tennessee. So
And then you kind of hit on my second question of where that, because sooner or later you have to match these things. And you kind of explained a little bit of, so where is the identity information held and how, and if there have been breaches in areas that hold the data, not the data separate from the identification data is what I'm talking about.
no, not that I'm aware of. We haven't heard of any breaches because that's the whole database of CODIS. That's part of it. But also there are very, very heavy fines and there's jail times if anything is breached in that. So not that I'm aware of in this work have I encountered that yet, but I cannot speak for everywhere.
Okay. So the ID information is held within CODIS? So where is it held?
The ID information, your personal and names, personal
Yes.
identifying, other than the actual markers, is not put into CODIS. Those are held at the lab that is accredited by the FBI. So, for instance, TBI would hold that. If there was a hit through CODIS, we would then confirm the hit with the personal identifying information at TBI.
Okay. So they are with the lab. So that's why I was asking if there have been any breaches within those labs. But I know
I'm unaware of any.
You can get back to me on that if there are any.
If y'all would just, if you have that information, anybody sit at that table up there, if we can get that to the committee, Representative Salinas, I think she'd appreciate that. Representative Salinas, do you have any additional questions or follow-up?
No, that's it.
Thank you so much. Members, that's all I have on the list. Anybody else have any questions or anything? Representative Hardaway, you recognize we need to wrap it up here. We got kind of going over.
Thank you, Chairman. On that, you cited that there, and I think it was you. Well, I'm not sure who it was. $90 savings for every dollar that was spent. If you can get that information to the chairman for distribution to the committee, how the investments versus the actual returns matter. Thank you, Chairman.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you all coming and being here today, taking your time to be here, giving us the information that we have, helping us move forward and making good policy to make the state of Tennessee a safer place to live, work, and raise a family. Also want to thank Arnold Ventures for all they do in the public policy area with the research and providing the support to allow us to reach the conclusions that or to get us where we are today. Just want to thank you all once again so much for being here and taking your time for being here. It's been very, very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have project return presentation coming up. Sir, if you would just have a seat there, and then once the red light comes on your microphone, you can introduce yourself and we'll get started. Give it one.
There we
It's
go.
on now. There you go.
So Chairman Farmer and Vice Chair Davis and committee members, thank you so much for having me. My name is Rico X, and I'm the CEO of Project Return. So I just want to share a few things about our organization and then offer a few highlights of our work from last year in particular. So Project Return is an organization that was founded in 1979. We are approaching 46 years of existence, and it was initially founded in the midst of prison ministry. And so our founders were doing prison ministry in several facilities, and began to notice that there were people that were, that they administered to, and a year or two or three afterwards, they noticed that they were coming back. And so the genesis of Project Return was really determining what are the things that we can do that enable people to be able to not return to prison. And so our vision is a full and free life after incarceration. So how does that work for Project Return? Well, two ways. One, we believe that access to employment is the number one driver for recidivism. And so we offer an array of workforce development strategies, job readiness classes, and job assistance with our participants who walk through our doors. In addition to that, we have an array of wraparound support services, which I will mention in the next slide. But the good thing about Project Return is that all of our participants are not mandated to work with us. They come to us under their own volition. And so even though there are a variety of different differences in their individual stories, the one thing that they all have in common is that they're highly motivated to change the narrative of their lives. At Project Return, we know that there are so many different barriers that our participants face, upon release from incarceration. And so at Project Return, we like to say that we provide yeses in a world full of no's. Some of the services that we offer, everything from birth certificates. So last year, for instance, we were able to provide 308 birth certificates, 285 state IDs for participants, over 3,000 food bags or meals. We provide transportation assistance, so 11,000 bus passes that were provided. Relapse prevention classes, computer lab and classes, child support services. We also provide nominal financial assistance for housing for our participants. So when we think about, again, those barriers that I talked about that really cover whether it's housing or education or technological barriers and of course access to employment, we really try to streamline those barriers and make their reentry process as smooth as we possibly can. In addition to that, in addition to really providing referrals, we also have revenue generating social enterprises. So one that I'll talk about is ProE, Project Return Opportunities for Employment, in which we actually partner with local companies in both Nashville and Chattanooga, and basically place our participants directly on site. Those individuals have the opportunity to, after 90 to 120 days, have the opportunity to transition full-time to those companies. So just as an example, one of our what we call transitional employment partners that's based in Chattanooga, Woodbridge, in April last year, they did a attendance challenge. And so out of the about roughly 150 people, they did a challenge. And the challenge was very simple, that they wanted for any staff person that showed up to their shift every day in that month and work them, they would get a financial reward. And so out of that 150 that were a part of that particular company, 14 of which were able to get that award. So how does that correlate with Project Return? So 10 out of those 14 people were either current or former Project Return participants. And I had the opportunity to tour there a couple of weeks ago. And nearly all of their second shift, with the exception of one individual, were from Project Return, and nearly all of their third shift were participants from Project Return. So it's very important, especially when we think about working with the business community and really helping with labor shortages. That is one of the ways in which we're able to partner with companies. Just a couple of impact scenario. So high employment, on average, about 75% of our participants who complete our actual job readiness classes are able to acquire jobs. Our overall recidivism rate is 16%. For those individuals that participate in our transitional employment and enter into what we call retention, which is year-long services that we continue to follow up with them even after they've gotten a job, that recidivism rate goes to 3%. So when we think about kind of the impact of that, it is breaking cycles of incarceration. It is, creating, quality workforce for local companies. And in particular, also, I think just, creating a pathway for increased public safety. Again, I've since September of 2021, we have been in the city of Chattanooga, and just kind of 3-year highlights. Over 710 participants have completed our job readiness program there, and 247 of which have been employed through Pro-E, and over $1 million of wages since we have launched in September of 2021. Couple of things I did want to highlight is that we have an incredible partnership with the Tennessee Office of Reentry. We are currently working with them on a statewide committee that is helping to streamline reentry services across the board and standardize what that looks like. We also have a growing partnership with TDOC. We are actually in the second year of a 3-year federal grant through the Department of Justice that has enabled us to expand into 4 facilities in which we offer the same classes that we provide on the outside when we offer them inside. Turney Center, Riverbend, Deborah K. Johnson, and Trousdale. And so just to kind of give an update, we've graduated 119 individuals from that inside in-reach prison facility program, and this is just a picture of Luann, who was someone that we encountered in our training, and she was released, and since then she's just doing a wonderful job, and has, even like a couple of months later, she showed up with the car. And so those are, when I think about the work that we do, and if you go into any of either one of our offices, you will see a bell on the wall. And anytime an individual gets a job, they get to ring that bell, and everybody, no matter what is happening, everybody stops and cheers and celebrates and applauds that. And so we always love to ring the bell to celebrate those big and small victories that our participants are able to achieve. And so with that, I will close and just open it up for any questions that you all may have.
And thank you for that. And members, I wanted to say we had a slideshow. He was referencing there. Something went down in the AV department, so it wasn't up as you were speaking. It's on dashboard. Notice Representative Bolso had it up, so figured some other members did too. But do we have any questions? Any questions, members? Vice Chair Davis, you recognized.
Thank you so much for being here. And just one of the questions, I believe you might have mentioned it at the beginning, that you were saying that y'all been around since 1979. And so I just was curious as to how long have you been providing those programs for the state?
Yeah, so I would say, particularly as it relates to the state, I mean, we have primarily been based in Nashville, but we do what we call in-reach. And so our in-reach program, and I would say probably like the last 10 years, we have received a recurring amount of funding through TDOC in particular. And so what that in-reach enables us to do is we actually go into all of the facilities across the state and participate in resource fairs. We receive, hundreds of mail from inmates that are looking to be released, and so we respond to each of those, each of those letters, and so that is like the way in which we're able to partner with TDLC in particular. And as I noted earlier, we've actually been able to expand that. So in addition to just participating in resource fairs and really, working from a mail perspective, responding to mail and letters, we've been able to provide those classes in 4 of those facilities. And so I would be remiss if I did not say that, we have been privileged to receive some additional state appropriations beyond that recurring through TDOC. Last year was the first year in several years that we were not able to get any additional appropriations. And so I think when we think about the idea of being able to sustain that work on a broader level, we would humbly request to, receive some additional appropriations for the next budget year.
Vice Chair Davis, any follow-up?
Yeah, I just have one more question. And so I know that you talked about your recidivism rates and then obviously the investment that you're making. Can you kind of talk about the return on investment? How that correlates and what some of those statistics are? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, from a year-to-year basis, you're looking at roughly $10 million in savings when you think about just what it costs to, to incarcerate someone. So just the ability to keep someone outside and actively contributing to society is very important. But I think just like a direct return on investment is approximately about $10 million a year that we're saving just with our program alone in terms of recidivism.
I just want to say thank you because I think it is truly important to make sure that those individuals come out and they have those job skills to get a job, and that helps you to be successful. So thank you so much for your program. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, I don't have anyone else on the list to speak. Seeing none. Sir, thank you so much for being here. You've been very helpful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And your hard work.
Thank you so much.
All right. Without objection, members will go back in session. And we do have a calendar. And I've noticed a couple of members have been sitting out there patiently. So members, without objection, if we could move to item 4, House Bill 120. That'd be Representative Halsey, sir. Thank you for your patience today. Members, this House Bill, item 4, House Bill 120. You've got a motion in a second. You're properly recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. This bill, as you know, the Department of Safety has a security detail that protects high-profile people. And this bill says if somebody blocks their movement or stands in the way and impedes their egress or ingress, that it's a Class A misdemeanor on its face. Under the old days, if that happened, you would charge somebody with failure to obey a lawful order, but then you got to go to court and prove that the order was lawful. This makes a standalone bill. If somebody does this with a threat or accompanied with a threat, it bumps it to a Class E felony.
Very good. Thank you for that explanation. If there's any questions, questions been called. Any objection to the question? Okay. All right. You want to, Representative Travis, you want to withdraw that and we'll have a couple questions here. All right. Good deal. All right. Representative Johnson, you're recognized.
Testimony on this bill?
We do. We have a young lady, or Lady Ashley Warmington, that's on the list, and I'll be happy to take her. And I apologize about that, Ms. Warmington. So if you would hold on one second. All right, Ms. Warmington, I don't know if you've testified in front of the committee before, but your red light's on, so your mic's on. Ma'am, if you could just keep it between 2 to 3 minutes here, and you'll have the opportunity to speak. And we're going to, members without objection, we're going to out of session here from Ms. Warmington. You're recognized, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Ashley Warmington, and I stand before you today as a concerned citizen of Tennessee. I'm here to voice my strong opposition to HB 120, a bill that threatens the very foundation of public participation in our legislative process. This isn't just an abstract concern for me. I, along with 2 other women, a reverend and a grandmother, were personally affected by the type of actions this bill seeks to criminalize. During the special session, we were physically removed from the Immigration Committee, not for disrupting, not for breaking any rules, but simply for being present, for holding a sign, for silently witnessing legislation that could directly harm my family and our communities. Now, HB 120 seeks to make such actions potentially criminal. In Criminal Justice Subcommittee, we heard that this may only be for executive protection troopers. Yet the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security's website states all Capitol Unit troopers are responsible for legislator safety. The bill's vague language opens the door to broad interpretation and arbitrary enforcement. How do we differentiate between executive protection troopers and non-executive protection troopers? What determines what constitutes a threat and based on what criteria? Could holding a sign, as I did, now be considered a criminal act? These unanswered questions could lead to the removal of citizens from legislative proceedings based on subjective judgments rather than clear, consistent rules. Furthermore, while the legislative director of the Department of Safety claims this bill is modeled after other states, they have failed to provide specific examples. Without the context, we cannot fully understand the potential implications of this legislation or learn from the experiences of other states. Let's be clear about what's at stake here. This bill is not just about maintaining order. It's about who gets to participate in our democracy. It has the potential to silence dissent, intimidate citizens, and create a chilling effect on public engagement with the legislative process. If this bill had been in effect during the special session, my presence and silent protest could have been deemed criminal. I urge you consider the broader implications of this bill. The Capitol is the people's house, funded by taxpayer dollars and meant for public engagement. Legislators should welcome community voices, not legislate them out of the room. HB 120 is unnecessary, potentially unconstitutional, and fundamentally anti-democratic. It threatens to erode the very principles of open government that our state should uphold. I strongly urge you to vote against this bill and protect the rights of Tennesseans to engage with their government. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Worthington. That was very good. 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Really appreciate you being here today. Members, any questions for Ms. Worthington? Representative Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You brought up something that talked about vague language. One of the concerns I have, and I'll ask the sponsor specifically, but when it talks about clearing the area, what does the area mean? I feel like I think you hit on something important. I think there is some vague language in this legislation. And so thank you for noting that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, I have Representative Todd, you're on the list. Or excuse me, Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just request we go back in session.
Any objection? Seeing none. We're back in session. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Worthington, for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Halsey, you're recognized. We're back in session. Oh, excuse me. Representative Johnson, you're recognized.
Yeah, I would like to ask that question. Two quick ones. Who all does this include? Who, just anybody that happens to be in protective services?
It's all under the.
Representative Halsey, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you. It's all under the auspices of the Department of Safety. And it's almost always THP officers, but they do use other agencies' officers as well.
But the protectee.
Representative Johnson, you're recognized.
The person. Who can be the people that are being protected?
It is somebody that the head of Department of Safety says needs protection.
Thank you. And
Representative Johnson, you're recognized.
The protective service, as far as it talks about, they can clear the area. So would that mean that is the area just a small general space? Could it be all of Legislative Plaza? What if the people had a permit to be there? So I guess my concern is clearing an area. What are we talking about? It seems like a vague term. And my concern is what the people that might have a permit to be there or clearing the whole Capitol, something like that, is concerning.
Representative Halsey?
The way the bill reads, it's moving from a point A to a point B with ingress and egress. Now, if they're going to a specific location and somebody is blocking their way to get in and they ask them to leave, they have to move that particular area because they're going that way, then this bill would kick in.
Representative Johnson.
So you don't see that as a huge big area like, say, the entire Rotunda or Capitol or Legislative Plaza?
President Halsey.
I can't see that happening unless you had a bomb threat or something like that. But this is just protective services to move somebody from point A to point B. That's the intent.
Very good. Representative Salinas, I have you. And then
So it says
Garrett.
ingress and egress, so that includes elevators, because I've been on the Capitol and trying to get in and out of those elevators on a busy day, for example, when the vouchers were on. Egress and ingress includes elevators.
Chairman Halsey, excuse me.
That would apply if there was, let's say, 5 people belonging to this unit and they're escorting the governor and they don't want anybody else on the elevator, it would apply to the elevator.
Representative Salinas, you have any follow-up?
They'd have to articulate that and ask you to leave.
Well, I'm just saying that I think if it include, especially when the governor is speaking, or I mean, it's crowded in there because people they're there to exercise their First Amendment rights, and sometimes it's loud and you can't hear. So I think that this would cause a lot of problems for people that coming to the Capitol and may not be able to hear what's going on as people are trying to get in and out of the elevators, and not only there but also here in Cordell Hall. So because it includes that, I think this opens up a lot of people to be punished within this.
Chairman Halsey, you have any follow-up to that or any
No, I
response?
I just can't see that applying unless people were blocking their ability to get the governor from point A to point B.
Representative Salinas, do you have any follow-up?
I have been at many a special session or a hot, heated bill. For example, Insure Tennessee, I don't know how many people were here when Insure Tennessee was on the docket. There were many times where I think even I would have been held criminal for standing and just waiting for the elevator. So to say that I think that this is not something that happens, I think all of us have been in these buildings when these meetings are happening. We just had a special session. There was a lot of people in and out of the building trying to get in and out of the elevators. So I don't think it's accurate to say that this doesn't happen.
And we will say, just for the record, I will say this requires an intentional act. This is not just a bystander out there waiting for the elevator. This is a person that is intentionally impeding the ingress and egress of a state official. And that could be any one of us for that matter. I mean, it's not just the leadership. I mean, if any one of us in here was under some sort of threat, the security detail, Representative Salinas would also do the same thing for you if you needed that access to this building in or out. Representative Halsey, any follow-up?
No, sir.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? I have Representative Garrett next on the list, and you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move previous question.
Previous question has been called. Any objection? I've got objection. All those, are we on the board? Previous question? We're gonna vote for previous question that's been called. We've got objection. All those in favor of previous question say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Ayes have it. We're voting to send House Bill, previous question prevails. We're voting to send House Bill item 120 to Finance, Ways and Means. All those in favor, vote in the affirmative, the negative, otherwise. Take the vote. Members, if you're going to vote, now it's time to do it. Ms. Clerk, take the vote. And if we're having technical difficulties, you can announce the vote out loud.
Mr. Chairman, you have 16 ayes and 5 noes.
Thank you so much. Looks like item 4, House Bill 120 is moving on to Finance, Ways and Means. Thank you, sir. That brings us to item, members, we could also go out of order. We had Representative Stevens. He's been in here. And I'm going to try to get these folks out of here. Item 8, House Bill 76. So you got a motion, a second, you're properly recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill came from Rutherford County's PAWS, which is Pet Adoption and Welfare Services. They're asking us to make a minor tweak to this bill to help them prosecute people who abandon animals that are in their custody. We're deleting one word from the statute, which is the word unreasonably, and we're clarifying that just because someone leaves an animal at a vet office or a animal shelter, that doesn't excuse them from their behavior. And that we also want to make very clear that there will be no amendments added to this legislation. This is not a subterfuge for some other agenda.
And thank you for that explanation. Members who have any questions, I have Representative Hardaway. Sir, you're on the list and you're recognized.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. When I asked for that just in case.
Thank you, sir. Members, any additional questions before we vote? I have Representative Salinas. You recognize, ma'am.
So you said unreasonably, what does that mean?
Representative Stevens, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's exactly the problem. If someone is caught abandoning an animal, when the officer goes to get a warrant now from the magistrate, they read the statute and it says that they have to act unreasonably, and the magistrate doesn't know what that means. So we either have to explain what unreasonably means, or we just delete it from the statute.
Representative Salinas, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you. Members, anyone else? Seeing none, question been called. Any objection? Seeing none. All those in favor of sending House Bill, looks like we may have to do this the old-fashioned way. House Bill, item 8, House Bill 76 to Finance, Ways and Means, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Hold that. Okay, I'll retract that. I apologize. Okay, members, all those in favor of sending House Bill 76 to Finance, Ways and Means, vote in the affirmative. Okay, looks like there. Mr. Clerk, if you take the vote, please. Yeah, Mr. Clerk, if you announce the vote.
Mr. Chair, you have 20 ayes and 0 nays.
Very good. Congratulations, sir. Looks like House Bill 76 is headed to Finance, Ways and Means. And I see Representative Slater. Sir, if you want to, looks like it's item 2, House Bill 102. You got a motion and a second. Sir, you're probably recognized.
It's an honor to stand before this committee today to bring some legislation that will improve and protect the lives of Tennessee's children, especially those who are in foster care and adopted children. This administration bill provides more accessibility to adoption records for adoptees, parents of adoptees, and those investigating potential neglect or abuse. If passed, it will benefit Tennesseans in 3 ways. First, this bill will allow adoptees access to their adoption record upon their 18th birthday or upon emancipation. Second, it will allow adoptive parents access to the entire adoptive record from an adoption up to the time the adoptee turns 18 years old. Thirdly, it will allow DCS access to records for investigations that may prevent further trauma to children who are victims of severe child abuse, and it will assist in prosecuting perpetrators. With that brief explanation, I stand ready for questions.
Thank you, Representative Slater. Great explanation. Members have any questions for Representative Slater on this bill? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Any objection? Seeing none, looks like we're ready to vote whether or not to send House Bill 102 to calendar and rules. Members, all those in affirmative, yes. Negative, no. All right, Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Mr. Chair, you have 20 ayes, 0 noes.
Very good. Congratulations. Looks like House Bill 102 is moving to the calendar and rules.
Thank you, Chairman.
So-
Thank you, committee.
Chairman Howe? Sir, that brings us to item number 7. That's House Bill 72. You got a motion and a second. You're properly recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to be back with the Judiciary Committee. Served on this great committee for about 4 years and always enjoyed it. Thank you for having me today. House Bill 72 came to me from the school superintendents in my district. As most of you may recall, this General Assembly in recent years passed a bill to make the selling of hemp-derived cannabinoid gummies to those under 21 years of age a Class A misdemeanor, which could be up to 1129. Since that time, the educators, as recently as last week, told me that the number of children in elementary and middle schools who have gained access to these cannabinoid gummies has skyrocketed because they think it's candy. At the urging of those educators, this bill will set a minimum penalty of a mandatory 48 hours in jail and a $500 fine. Still, it gives discretion to the judges to increase that for repeat offenders. And so this bill is simply an attempt to protect the children and let those who violate the law know that there will be consequences. And I ask for passage.
And thank you for that explanation. Members, we have any questions for Chairman Howe? Any questions? Seeing none, we ready to vote? Any objection to voting? Seeing none. Mr. Clark, if you take the vote. Members? All right, Mr. Clark, if you take the vote.
Mr. Chair, you have 16 ayes, 4 noes.
Very good. Well, congratulations, Chairman Howell. First time back in front of the committee this year and with a win. House Bill 72 is heading to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks much.
Committee.
All right, members, now if we would, just move to item 1, House Joint Resolution 48. Chairman Doggett, you're properly recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, House Joint Resolution 48 is a constitutional amendment. It passed this body, the previous General Assembly. We currently have under Article 1, Section 35 of Victims' Bill of Rights. This is an enhancement to that. And so I stand ready for any questions.
Leader Lambert, I have you first on the list.
Move previous question.
Previous question has been called. Any objection? Seeing none. Members, looks like we're ready to vote on to send House Joint Resolution 48 to Finance, Ways and Means. Mr. Clerk. All right, if you take the vote, please.
Mr. Chair, you have 17 ayes and 2 noes.
Chairman Doggett, congratulations. Looks like House Joint Resolution 48 is headed to Finance, Ways and Means. That brings us to item 3, House Bill 103 by Chair Lady Littleton. Ma'am, you got a motion and a second. You're properly recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a DCS administrative bill. This legislation expands the extension of foster care program to include more young adults in the program, and it changes certain requirements for young adults to receive extension of foster care services. Currently, young adults under the age of 21 are eligible to receive extension of foster care services. This legislation changes the age to under the age of 23 and allows the children who have found permanency between the ages of 16 and 18 years of age to be eligible for the program. It also removes the fees related to issuance of a driver's license, permit, or photo identification for youth in the extension of foster care program or juvenile justice programs. Finally, the bill reestablishes the foster care youth outreach liaison program and makes it permanent. With that,
Thank you, Chair Lady Littleton. Great explanation. I have on my list Chairman Doggett. You recognize, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move previous question.
Very good. Members, any objection? Got objection? All those in favor of previous question, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. No. Ayes have it. We're back on the bill. Voting on whether or not to send House Bill 103 to Finance, Ways and Means. Mr. Clerk, take the vote. If you would close the board and take the vote, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chair, you have 16 ayes, 1 no, and 2 present not voting.
And thank you. Chair Lady Littleton, looks like House Bill 103 is headed to Finance, Ways and Means. Thank you. Thank you. Representative Johnson, you're recognized.
You know, just one little I'm trying to find out what this bill does in section 4. One little clarifying question. That's all I wanted to ask. I don't ask things for kicks and giggles. I want to know what this part of the bill means. How can we just not ask a single question about a bill as we try to understand it? I'm 100% for the bill, but I couldn't ask a tiny little question to get some clarification. This is ridiculous.
I appreciate those comments. I'm chairing this committee. Member brought previous question. Majority of this committee voted for previous question. That's how this works. Chair Lady Littleton, I'm sure, would be happy, Representative Johnson, to answer any questions that you may have about this bill at any point in time. That brings to item number 5, House Bill 191. And this is by Leader Lamberth. And you've got a motion and a second. Looks like there's an amendment traveling with this, Leader, 3410. As I understand it, this just,
Second on the amendment.
you got a motion and a second. This is just an amendment which does rewrite the bill, but changes one word, from airplane to
Aircraft.
aircraft.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Members, we want to go ahead and put this amendment on. That's all it does. Motion second. No objection. All in favor of adopting House Amendment 3410, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Now we're back on the bill as amended. House Bill 191. You're recognized, sir.
Now, Mr. Chairman, the bill does exactly what it says. It's less than a half a page. Would make it a misdemeanor to point laser beams into someone operating an automobile, boat, airplane, or other motor vehicle. That's very dangerous. Shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff.
We're going to have on my list, have Representative Hardaway. You recognize? Members, any additional questions before we vote? Seeing none. Questions been called on the bill. Any objection? Seeing none. All those in favor of sending House Bill 191 to calendar and rules, vote aye. Opposed, vote no. Mr. Clerk, or Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Mr. Chair, you have 19 ayes, 0 noes.
Good. House Bill 191 is going to be traveling to calendar and rules. Thank you. Representative Stennett, you recognize.
I was trying to hit the yes and it wouldn't.
Okay.
So,
If you just let the clerks know, they have a vote
okay,
sheet.
sure.
Let them know. Thanks, sir. Quickly, if we could, item 6, we'll try to get, we've got 2 bills left. That's House Bill 1035. Leader Lamberth, sir, we'll try to, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the codification bill that codifies all the action from the previous year.
Very good. Members who have any questions? Questions? 1035, 1035. This is the annual codification bill. Any questions? Questions have been called. Any objection? Seeing none. All those in favor of sending House Bill 1035 to calendar and rules, vote aye. Opposed, vote no. So on the board. All right, Madam Clerk, will you take the vote?
Mr. Chair, you have 18 ayes, 0 noes.
Very good. House Bill 1035 is traveling to calendar and rules. That brings us to our last item, item 9, House Bill 96. Vice Chair Davis, you're recognized, probably recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just some cleanup language brought to us by the Tennessee Attorney General's office. We needed to add a few words, and so I would appreciate passage.
Very good. Members who have any questions? Representative Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in this bill, does it give power to the we appoint the Attorney General, appointed Attorney General over elected officials? Is that correct?
Vice Chair Davis.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you for the question. So essentially, this bill, the only thing we're changing in it is the language with regard to or both. The Attorney General already has the authority to conduct these investigations and already has the authority to initiate those criminal prosecutions. This just what the cleanup language does is the list of people to look into. The language, the way it read, it meant you had to investigate all of them instead of just as individual. Does that make sense? And so that's where we're clarifying it. So if you just need to look at one of those individuals, that's what they're doing, because the way it was written, it meant that they had to do all of them. Does that make sense? So we're trying to clear that up.
And thank you, Representative Johnson, Vice Chair Davis. We're out of time. We have a committee coming in. Sounds like there's a lot of questions on this bill, so it'd be great if we could just roll this next week. That gives us an entire week for members to talk with Vice Chair Davis on that. So without objection, item 9, House Bill 96 be rolled for 1 week. And without objection, we'll stand adjourned.
All right, you'll need
You what?
They'll have the bills for you to sign.
Perfect.
I mean, they can't start civil without us, so.
Okay.